line.
Thank you very much indeed. I was to share with Deputy Ledden, but he isn't here, so I might take the full 10 minutes. First, I want to very much welcome and accept the private member's motion on offshore renewable energy from the Independent Group. I think it's absolutely timely and I think supported. I would imagine supported across this House, because what the deputies say is absolutely true. This is a huge economic opportunity for our state, as well as being critical in meeting our climate and renewable targets. And it has potential to completely transform the economic development of the state towards the west and northwest and southwest and the coasts right across this country. Is one of the benefits that it would lead to a better balanced economic development. And we do also have to see it within the context of a very large vision, how we turn this opportunity into an exporting possibility, where we sell our power coming from our oceans, the Atlantic Ocean, into the rest of Europe. So to deliver on that, again, I agree with very much the intent of the motion. We need a really good regulatory planning framework to make sure it is delivered. I wanted to set out, if I can, here today in broad details what the government is doing in that regard. Firstly, the National Marine Planning Framework was established in 2021 by the Minister of Housing, Darragh O'Brien, and that sets out the objectives and policies which must be considered in all planning decisions related to the maritime area. At the same time, management of our maritime area is being reformed through the Maritime Area Planning Bill, and I'd just like to commend all deputies who are involved in this House in terms of getting it through the House in record time. It's in the Seanad at the moment, and we expect it to be enacted before the end of the year, which is critical as part of the infrastructure we need to manage our offshore resources. One of the main features of the bill is the creation of a new state consent, the Maritime Area Consent, as a first step in this new planning process. To meet our goal, our 2030 targets, 5 gigawatts of offshore wind, 80% renewables, we need a pathway to select a number of projects which have advanced under the foreshore regime to transition to the new maritime area planning regime that has been established. So under these special transition provisions in the bill, I, as Minister for the Environment, will have a responsibility for assessing and granting the maritime area consents for a first batch of ring-fenced offshore projects, known as the relevant projects. These first MACs are expected to be granted in Q3 of next year, and that will be a crucial step towards meeting our 2030 targets. They will be required to apply for all the requisite consents and planning permission, and will be subject to the full assessment procedures by On Board Penala. After the assessment and grant of this first batch of offshore renewable energy projects, responsibility will be handed over to the new agency, the Maritime Area Regulatory Authority, or MARA, which various deputies have mentioned. That will be established and operational in the first quarter 2023, and its establishment is one of the highest priorities of this government to meet this economic opportunity. In addition to developing the planning and regulatory frameworks for this new multi-billion euro offshore industry, my department is also developing a route to market for offshore wind under the Renewable Energy Support Scheme, RES. At least 3 RES auctions dedicated to offshore wind are planned this decade. The draft terms and conditions of the first of these auctions, ORES 1, were published for consultation by my department in October. Final ORS 1 terms and conditions will be brought to Government for approval in Q2 next year, with the objective of the auction commencing later next year. We are putting community benefit at the heart of the process, learning the lessons what Deputy Naughton said from previous attempts on this, and all offshore wind energy developments will be required to make community benefit funds contributions. Owing to the large scale of wind developments, these contributions are expected to be significantly larger than those of onshore counterparts. Ireland's intention is to move to a plan-led approach to the development of offshore renewable energy. A new offshore renewable energy development plan will be completed next year. Together with the National Marine Planning Framework, the Offshore Renewable Energy Development Plan will provide a framework for the sustainable development of Ireland's offshore renewable energy resources into the future. Under this plan-led approach, all offshore transmission system assets will be owned by the Irish transmission system operator EirGrid, publicly owned. Increased interconnection and the eventual development of a European offshore mesh grid will be key to realising Ireland's short and long-term offshore renewable energy objectives. The Climate Action Plan commits Government to updating the existing electricity interconnection policy next year, which will facilitate development of further interconnection with the EU and UK beyond the Celtic and the Gridlink interconnectors, which are currently in an advanced stage of pre-construction development. To assist this, I should also let the deputies know we've just taken on the presidency of the North Seas Energy Cooperation Group. 10 countries across Europe working together to see exactly how we can design this North Seas interconnected grid so we share power and we get power at times when wind speeds are low. This economic opportunity is key. It will require investment of tens of billions of euro in Ireland's offshore renewable energy sector. This investment will deliver considerable benefit in terms of getting high-value indigenous jobs in the installation and maintenance of generation assets and associated infrastructure. Further jobs will be created in the development of indigenous supply chain and port infrastructure. The Department of Transport, in conjunction with the Irish Maritime Development Office, will shortly publish a policy statement outlining the proposed strategy for providing infrastructure at ports to facilitate development and future operation of offshore renewable energy projects. A Shannon Estuary Task Force will be established by Government, led by the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment and supported by officials from Government departments and state agencies, as well as county and city councils. This task force will consider the potential of the Shannon Estuary in terms of regional economic development for the renewable energy sector, as well as transport and logistics, manufacturing and tourism, and will develop a strategy to achieve this potential to be published in 2022 following approval by Government. A cross-departmental offshore renewable energy team, chaired by my department, has also been established to capture wider economic and business opportunities associated with the development of offshore renewables in Ireland. Furthermore, Enterprise Ireland has for the last several years focused on developing the Irish SME capability to engage with the offshore wind industry. This workstream has included identifying relevant Irish SME capability across a number of sectors and establishing and supporting an Irish offshore wind cluster comprising more than 60 companies. Can I wrap up and conclude by saying the deputies are absolutely right to identify the fact that our sea area, 7 times our land area, and it happens to be one of the areas in the world with probably the strongest, most extensive wind resource. We are seeing what we will see the likely stages of development. The first stage, early stage, will be in the Irish Sea, those relevant projects particularly I mentioned earlier. We will then, this decade, though, move into the southern waters and into western waters. And the critical issue is it's likely to see fixed bottom wind turbines in the Irish Sea, moving to floating turbines as we move into western waters, which are deeper, harsher environment, but far larger potential resource. That's where there's huge potential. The key issue is, what do we do when the power comes ashore? And I think it's thinking bigger on this, not only in terms of port development, but also industrial development. What's likely to happen is that electricity power supply may be converted into hydrogen or ammonia and other fuel systems. And that then gives the industrial opportunity in the likes of Shannon Port, our Cork Harbour, our Rosslare Harbour, or elsewhere. It's not just that it's the supporting the offshore industry, it's the new industries that can potentially come from this. It will not be without controversy. It will not be easy. We've seen in other countries the development of offshore wind brings real challenges. People will say, well, firstly, that they may not want to see turbines within sight of their shore. There is a critical issue we need to get right in terms of maritime environment planning, so it doesn't affect the biodiversity, critical marine biodiversity that we have to restore and not just re-attain. But if we can overcome those concerns, the planning concerns are the greatest, then in my mind the potential is limitless for the country. It is, I think Dr. Berry said, that example of the building of Ardnacrusha. This is an Ardnacrusha type moment where we should be thinking 50 and 100 years ahead. And in constructing and in setting up this industry, doing it in a sustainable basis, we have the potential to power our country, power our industry, create employment right across this country in a way that's unmatched, I think, in any other economic opportunity that the state has faced, and that's why the government supports the intentions and the broad outline of the opposition motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.